The sunshine. This is something to be very grateful for. Here in the sunshine state of Florida, I am just in pure appreciation, pure gratitude to be able to witness, to be part of this existence, to truly just be, to take a walk. I have my legs underneath me. I have my heart beating. I have the breath. I have this beautiful waterfront within less than a mile from my home. Buddy is sprawled out over in the sand, and he's happy as can be. He used to have trouble keeping up with me when we first started walking together. Now he's taken me for a walk, which I love. He's super sweet. He's one of the best dogs ever. I mean, aside from my first dog, Angel. But then he really is just such a sweetie poo. So, these little things, you just need to tap back in and become more aware and attuned to what there is to be grateful for in this life. And these are the things that I have to bring myself back. It's like, like fishing, you got to kind of wheel it back on in. You got to reel yourself back in. We are allowed to feel these emotions. So even yesterday, obviously I'm in a much better space than I was yesterday. Yesterday was very much an emotional roller coaster, and more so for me, and it was more of a culmination of feelings that had been bubbling to surface for a while. I tend to keep things a lot more internal than I put them out there. I was much more external growing up as a child. I was the kind of child that, I would act out. I would speak about things. I would want to be heard. And so therefore, sometimes I'd go to those extremes and create the scene, the drama that we all claim we dislike. But in reality, we all do like a little drama in our life, because drama gives us attention. And what is it we all desire? We want to be seen and heard and felt and loved and appreciated. So sometimes that's really what it is. It's not even that we like the drama. We crave and desire. And you know what? We're humans. We need attention, affection, to be embraced, to be heard, to really truly feel appreciated. And so when I was younger, as a result of the things I shared yesterday, the experiences that me and my sisters had, I remember having fits. I remember having tantrums and being very upset and not getting my needs met. See, this is one of the things that creates us so much trauma and drama in our life, is that when we don't get our needs met as children at younger ages, the most important times that we need to know we're safe, secured, supported, loved, nurtured by our family. When our needs aren't met, we develop coping mechanisms, survival tactics, these techniques of how am I supposed to proceed in the world? If my needs weren't met there, I now have to find a way to meet my own needs. And so we develop these habits, these routines, these behaviors that are ultimately making up for what was missing, what we lacked. Remember when I discussed lack the other day? So when we feel we're lacking in an area, we try to make up and we try to compensate in another area. And so this whole idea of getting our needs met, something I've learned through my Beyond Addiction training, we develop our personalities as a result. And these personalities aren't necessarily a true reflection of our heart and our soul, but more so, a lot of times, they become the personality that takes us and carries us through life. And of course, that's going to serve us to a certain point before we eventually maybe come to that confrontation, that brick wall, that hitting the, oh my gosh, this is not serving me any longer. When the personality, when the coping mechanisms, when the survival tactics, techniques that we've adapted in our lives are no longer serving, because we recognize I'm not happy in my life, been here, this is how I'm speaking, always going to speak from experience, people. I love you all. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for the kind words and gestures and extensions of love and appreciation the other day. It really warmed my heart. Whew. The personality even needs to be confronted. It needs to be, appreciated and honored and say thank you. Just like the ego mind, because that's basically the personality is the ego. We have to confront it and say, I really, really appreciate how much you've done for me. And I honor you because you've served me. And now I realize it's time for me to move on, and it's time for you to move on. And so I want to have this moment of gratitude for you and hold you for all the service you have given me. Because I see how you've protected me. I see how you've served. And now it's time for me to grow my wings, transform, and learn a new way of coping. One that serves my higher next level, right? So that I can rise up from the flames of this death and rebirth. Because that's what the personality is going to do. Especially those of us who have had, different types of traumas in our lives in our past. I don't think anybody can say they haven't had something happen to them, but I can't speak for anybody else. And I feel that from what I've experienced in my own life, that what I consider not so bad as another is just my comparison. So we only have our own personal experience to compare others to. And to say you don't judge is actually a misnomer. The reality is we're always looking and comparing ourselves to others, to see how far we've come, to recognize our own strengths, to see if we embody something, what we appreciate in another, which really does reside within us. When you look at somebody and you think, oh my gosh, I so admire that person. Well, they're there to serve you, to recognize, so that you can recognize you are that too. What it is you admire in someone else also resides within you. And so, yes, I discern, I see other people's experiences, and I can downplay or be small or play small. But the reality is nobody's ever smaller than another. Just like I say, no story is any more or less important than another's. So we should never downplay what we are going through ourselves or what someone else is going through. I've found that I can see somebody going through something. I can't speak that it'll get better for them. I can only say, I'm holding you in my heart. And I say that because I want people to understand that I know I may not have the answers or what you need to hear from me in this moment, but just know that I'm holding you sacred in my heart, because whatever it is, I pray for every single person that you get what it is you need, not what I think you need. Because each of us has a path. We all have a journey. I can't speak to you and say, I believe you need this. I may see something in you, I may recognize something in you, and I could share something with you, but it's not my place to advise you unless you're willing to, you're asking for it, right? So again, trying to help another person, it's the subtlest form of control. And all that is really thinking we need to help somebody else is to make ourselves feel more comfortable around somebody who makes us feel uncomfortable. The discomfort we feel is really just bringing up our own surface triggers, what it is within us that needs attention. And I've been finding that whenever I see something in someone else, it's just taking me out of my own stuff. But every once in a while, you will see something in someone else that allows you and your willingness to open to, wow, that person is actually bringing something up for me that is an opportunity, an open portal, opening the door for me to step into my personal power and to step in with the awareness that this is feeling uncomfortable, but it's that moment when I can choose to heal it. I can feel it fully and I can heal it fully. And the only way energy can motion and stay in motion is for us to feel it and release it. It's not going to go away if you try to keep pushing it away. I've found over the course of my life, it's actually just gotten worse and bubbled up stronger. Nobody wants to be the volcano. Nobody wants to be barraging everybody with their crap. When you start out your day and something doesn't go right, recognize and take the moment to take a deep breath. Whew, is this person aggravating me, agitating me, or is it something within me that started first in the day? My own personal impatience is going to get projected on other people. So when we can't look within and see the impatience within us, we're just going to be like the tyrant of, why can't you, right? I've been here, I've done this. I know this from personal experience, that whenever something within me, I'm hypercritical and I'm sitting here going, why didn't I get this done sooner? Or why didn't I do this? Or why isn't this happening the way I want it, right? Then everybody else kind of falls into the same train. So I have to check myself regularly. Is the impatience with this other person really a reflection of the person, or is it really a reflection of me? 99% of the time, it's me not being patient with myself. And the moment I'm patient with myself, and I start to find the compassion within for me, it's easier to extend it out to everyone else around me. That's why it's so important for me to get my daily practice, to get my meditation on, to clear out the garbage pit in the mind. Because guess what? The more this stuff is clogged up with crap, the more this stuff is going to come out with crap. This has been my experience. If I'm not clear up here, my communication isn't going to be clear. My clarity of vision isn't going to be clear because it's all garbled up with all this stuff going on up in here. And let me tell you, that mind gets you in trouble too, doesn't it? Because it's like projectile vomit. And we do and say things that we wish we could take back, but you can't take it back once it's said. The most you can do, and I know this, for me, it's not always easy to chalk up and go, ooh. It took me years to recognize it's okay to say I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I made an error. When I have made an error or a mistake, I will own it wholeheartedly. But I also like to have a dialogue too. So sometimes when things come up with conflict and conversation with me, it's mostly because I have this Libra ascendant. I have this thing that I like to weigh. Well, let's discuss this. Let's have a more open dialogue, because for me to just take what someone says and just immediately apologize, I also want to maybe understand where they're coming from. Maybe they're seeing things differently than I'm seeing things. And if I explain where I'm coming from and they explain where they're coming from, this understanding, it's about standing under the other person. It's about coming from that place of I'm willing to listen without attachment to the intentions behind your dialogue or the intentions behind mine. I'm just opening my heart, listening with my ears. Because the reality for me has been neutrality is what serves us most. If we're stuck in the negative mindset of you're doing this to me and how dare you attack me? Whew. It's not an open dialogue. That's when it becomes one-sided. And there's a lack of listening on one part or the other. Or you can even get in the positive mind and get a little bit too cray-cray in the sense that, okay, yeah, you're right. Yep. I'm just going along to get along. And that doesn't serve either. So it's really coming to the neutrality and recognizing, is this is a good, bad, where's this coming from? And let's just really listen to one another and let's come to an understanding. For example, something I learned years ago through my own personal experience, I had been dating this man and I was involved in an MLM. Here's an experience that I'm sharing about that. One of the reasons we're very much against the MLMs in our group. Although I really, at the time, did believe in this company. The company was New Ways. It was back in the early 1990s because I was first stationed in Omaha, Nebraska. I believed in it because not so much the skinny dip, which was the big craze back then. That stuff you'd put on your skin and then you'd wrap that plastic around it and it was supposed to squeeze it and you were supposed to lose inches. Well, yeah, of course you're going to lose inches if you're basically putting something to constrict your your legs because it's basically pulling it all together like wearing compression pants or something. And so I thought that was a cool product, and I always felt fat. I know that's going to sound strange to many of you. I had the whole body image issue, which I can talk to about another time. But I believed in the fact that they started talking about what it opened up an awareness for me about products and ingredients, which that was back when I was 19, when I first got involved with New Ways. And learning about these products started to bring awareness to things like sodium lauryl sulfate, propylene glycol, glycerin, all these things that they put in products that are salt agents, make it all foamy, which all it is that idea that, oh, if it foams, it's clean. Because don't we all wash our hair and think, oh my gosh, if my hair is foaming up, then it's getting clean. And all that is a salt agent. Or glycerin on your skin. Believe it or not, glycerin suffocates your skin. Your skin is your largest living, breathing organ. I learned this back then. I was 19. And so I've always had a passion for what you put on your body should be something you eat. Moving your body, wellness overall. My last name is La Bonté, and it really is about overall mind, body, soul connection. And the French term translates to, other than they used to call the rich man La Bonté in French, but La Bonté in French, or La Bontà in Italian, is this bounty of rich wellness, of you're healthy, you're wealthy. The wealth is really in your health. It wasn't ever that richness was about the money, right? But that's how it was interpreted, because how we valued back then might have been the health. But it just seems to have transpired over these years that people value money more, right? So, and it's one of the reasons Tom and I created Ridiculously Authentic, although we do really want to see everybody eating optimally, but you know what, that's your journey, and we're not here to tell you how to go about it. We're just here to support you wherever you are. And overall, we want to see you all thriving in life in general. We want to see you really grabbing life by the horns, and really it's not a bull. Let's spread your wings like the butterfly, right? You know, I love to dance. I've got cars driving by me over here. So I'm not paying attention, but it's just, that's what the background noise, if you even catch that. This is the beauty of having the earbud on, I think. So going back to this story, because I started out, and I'm very good at digressing, but if it wasn't for a meditation, I might not be able to reel myself back to where I first began. I was dating this man. I had gotten orders to Korea. So I spent a year stationed in Korea. I was in the Air Force at the time. And I was, at that time, very much in that acting out stage. That in order to get attention, because the way I grew up, everybody yelled to be heard, which I thought was normal. You're passionate when you raise your voice. I care, so I raise my voice. And so if I'm having a conversation with you, it's not a conversation, it's a who can talk louder than the other person, because that's how my parents were, this gentleman that I was dating came from a very Christian background, which I was kind of a little bit of a wise ass about too, by the way. Like, how do you know you're saved? I can do those little jabs because I really kind of wanted to know, but I was also an instigator, and that's another part of me. The birds. And so anyway, going back, basically he was mocking me about, it's got propylene glycol in it, while we were at the chow hall, the cafeteria where we used to eat when we were in the military, in front of others. And I was mortified, because here I was, very passionate about what it was I believed and knew about products, and I really wanted to spread the awareness. Now, the MLM itself, I can't say that it did anything for me, because I didn't make any money. I spent a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of money back then. I was still an airman, an E2 or E3 at the time. So, making money, forget it. It was more like I just found it fascinating because it brought me that awareness. So yeah, it did serve me back then. And so here he was, he's mocking me, and we go back to the dorm rooms, and we're talking, or I should say, I was yelling. I was really upset. And he kept on saying to me, you can lower your voice. And I'm like, I am lowering, my voice isn't loud. What are you talking about? I mean, like, my voice was elevated. We didn't drink a lot, so it wasn't about alcohol. And I didn't know. I really didn't know. But it was years late, about a year or two later, when he contacted me. I was in Korea at the time. We had broken up, but I guess there was still something there despite it. And he called me up. It was 6 months later. That's what it was. And here's the thing. I was trying to express to him, although he said to me that my elevation and vocal tone, my voice octaves getting louder, was really what turned him off from listening. And this is where conscious communication comes in. It's so key with any relationship. It doesn't matter intimate, it's with anybody. How we present ourselves to someone is how we are received. If you come across attacking, you will be received, and you will also receive the attacking or the defense. So if you go into a conversation with an open hand, ready to shake, versus a fist, which is ready to pounce, you got to look at what do you think is going to come back with this one. So he says to me on the phone 6 months later, I realized what you were really just trying to tell me was that despite the fact that I didn't understand I had hurt your feelings, that just because my intentions were not to hurt your feelings doesn't mean it didn't happen. Let me tell you, that was huge. For him to understand that what I was communicating was, listen, buddy, you hurt my feelings, you weren't supportive of me. Here you are mocking me, so if anything, how can there be respect between us if you're sitting here talking about me like, oh, it's got propylene glycol, you're making fun of me, you're mocking me. In the end, here he was being humble enough to say, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to. It wasn't my intention. And at the time, I really believed that if it wasn't my intention, that it shouldn't have happened, which goes back to the cognizant theory of children. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. If you think your intention was pure, doesn't mean that's how it's received. And this is one of the biggest disconnects in communication, that when we communicate, that you understand that the person has received it with the intentions that you had behind it. If you want them to hear you purely from that space in your heart, then you also want to make sure that they heard you. You want to also ask, did that come across? How did you receive that? What is it you heard me say? Because we can regurgitate what we think we heard using other words, which completely changes the dialogue, completely changes the meaning. That truth is in the words, but it's also in the language, the way that you hold yourself, the body, the whole composure, and also what we bring to the table as individuals is our personal experiences, our belief systems, all of everything that we've shouldered on our life from birth, and even before birth, by the way, is what we bring to every conversation. How much of it you've healed, how much of it you've rewritten in your story, that is what is received across the lines. If you show up as you are with a pure intention and a heart, with a loving, receptive, open dialogue, then it's going to be more received, better received, than if you're showing up ready to just pounce on someone. So I'm only sharing that because I think that one of the biggest lessons for me over these years has been to tone my communication down. Now, I may come across as very soft and sweet, but in the past, like I said, it was louder vocals. It was who could be heard over the other person. I wanted to be heard because back then that was a need that wasn't met. And so that was my coping mechanism, and that was my personality. And so then bringing all of that together, the personality is not what defines you. It only defines what it is you're needing or feel you're lacking because we're trying to attract and bring it into our life, right? So it's a powerful awareness for me, even just sharing that now, because sometimes I'm getting this as I'm saying it with you, right? I'm speaking and sharing with you this experience, and then having that cathartic moment where I go, oh yes, that's exactly what it is. I'm gonna have to listen to my own video again. And that's how sometimes things stream into me, is I can speak it out loud. My mother and I used to speak on a daily basis, and just speaking with her, I would get these intuitive insights just hearing myself. It wasn't really so much about my mom listening or re-speaking back to me or anything like that. But truly, I had to take a break from my mom too. But even just the other day, I spent some time with her. My mom, I love my mom. She brought up a funny conversation. I might bring that up at the end of the video. So yeah, sometimes when we do need to communicate things that are important to us, we have to drop that fear of rejection, as I spoke yesterday. We have to have those uncomfortable conversations, and the dialogue needs to be there. And we shouldn't fear what the other person is going to say or how they're going to receive it, although it really helps if you yourself take the time to sit with it and go within and come to that neutral point where you can express yourself with clarity, but also be aware if maybe the clarity on the other end of the line with the other person is even going to be there, because sometimes we'll have a conversation and that other person is meeting you where they're at, so they may not be able to come up, you might not be able to meet at the same point at the same time. Sometimes that's okay, but you have to learn to discern, as I've learned in my life. There are times when you need to stop and you think, oh my gosh, I really need to communicate this, but maybe this isn't the time. Sometimes that's hard. I'm just telling you that right now. So some of these dialogues, these communications, these conversations can't be had at the moment you want to have them. You can always journal. That's what really helps me the most. And in the end, that's what serves me the most. You know, having my morning meditation, having my morning practice. And let me tell you, I dropped off. I wasn't as consistent for several years, more than 3, since 2013 when I first started my teacher training, and I already had a pretty good practice as it was. I was consistent and got up to, like I've said before, over 3 hours in the morning. And when I say that I feel like I built up a reserve just from all of that. But when I do my practice, my days are much smoother, and that really things do roll off my shoulders much easier. And so during these times, these crazy times, and I know for all of you who have reached out in these beautiful comments, which I still am catching up on, by the way, for all of you that have reached out and all of you I've seen, Libby, thank you so much for the courage to step in and do that video. You know, I love you. Please keep coming back. We're here to support you. You know, this group is amazing. It takes courage. And I like to remind people that, you know, that vulnerable courage, it's like a muscle. You got to exercise it. And every time that we show up for ourselves, no matter how fearful we are up to that point, we get a shot of that adrenaline. We actually create our own happy hormones. It's like, give yourself a hug. That's what it's like. Because once you've done it once, your body's like, hey, that felt pretty good. Kind of like walking. That felt good. Let's go do that again. And maybe you have a little trepidation again leading up to the next time. But the reality is, the more you keep doing it, the more you keep showing up for you, the more that muscle gets exercised, the more you're like in your personal power. You're like, I feel great. I feel confident. And then you've got these beautiful rad stars showing up, cheering you on, supporting you, which is what really warms my heart. I'm very humbled, okay? I can only say that with all I've been through over the years and all that I've felt in my heart I've been meant to serve, that being able to show up no matter at what space I'm at, I really prefer these kind of environments. I really do like to be more raw and authentic and just showing up randomly, because this is where I'm at. And that's like you can't plan these things. I used to do this when I first started doing live videos, something like almost 2 years ago, before Tom found me. I was doing them because of my journaling, my blogging. I couldn't keep up on a written note or even just tapping it into my notes on my phone. I was doing a blog at the same time, and I said, you know what? Facebook had just come out with the live feature. I'm just going to start playing with this. And that's what I did. I started writing, and I'd write a little bit, and then I'd do these videos going like, okay, this is cool. You know what? Even if nobody saw them, that wasn't the key. The key for me was just that cathartic release, that sharing of whatever it is I'm going through was going to help someone if I had 1 or 2 people watching my video. And so I started doing that 2 years ago, and it felt good. It felt right for me. And this is where I want to be again. I hope this is helping. I see some of you saying that this is exactly where you feel you needed to be and what you needed to hear. And thank you for letting me know. It is humbling that we're all on a journey. We're all just trying to get by. Some days it's harder than others. It's all perfect, and that's another subject in itself, right? Perfectionism. One of the things that dropped in for me this morning, perfectionism. There's no such thing. There's nothing that's perfect. Perfectionism is this idea of control. Control, perfectionism, they're one and the same. If I think I have some control over something, it's only because I have this perfect vision of how I want it to look. This perfect idea of this is under control, and that can hinder my growth. And when I am in a space of trying to control everything, being perfect about everything, that's not ease and grace, that's not fluidity, and that's not flow. What that is lacking soul, because when you're feeling exhausted, it's because you're out of alignment with your soul, right? You're inundated with things that don't even serve. And it's usually because you're doing them through obligation or because you think that's the way it should be done versus feeling how it should unfold. What serves us the most is listening within, listening to our body, which is a reflection of our mind. It's tapping into your body's wisdom. It's listening deeply to your heart and asking, how may I serve in the best capacity for others to inspire and uplift? Because when you show up for you and just serve through this vessel, you're inspiring people through your own actions who may have felt like they were incapable, but because they saw you doing it, they get that little insight and that little spark of inspiration of, I think I can do this too. You know, you see Ella go live, you see Tom go live, you see people like Libby or Selma or myself or whoever it is that inspires you, Lucy, you know, whether it's music to uplift you. We have some amazing people in this group. And I apologize if I can't mention you all because I'm still trying to always catch up. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes, and sometimes I get overwhelmed and I fail to take care of myself and I go overboard, and then I have to kind of reel myself back because I want to see this group really grow. I want to see this group thrive. I want to see everybody blossom. I want to see everybody in this group just really achieving what it is their soul came here to achieve. To align with and allow soul to make you whole. I mean, truly, really, if we can do that, it sounds so crazy that, well, my soul, we're talking about my soul. You know, some people are going to go, well, that's all fun and games, but when you come down to real life, well, guess what? The real life is always going to be a reflection of what's going on within. And if you're not already tuned into what's going on within you, that external world is just going to be a disconnect anyway. So when you're grasping at the seams, trying to find your purpose, it's all right within you all the time. Everywhere you look is a reflection of that if you're seeing it within yourself. I've learned in my life that When I'm angry, I encounter angry people. When I'm happy, I see all the joy around me. If I woke up, like this morning, so I was getting ready to prepare and do the Kundalini 40-day Rad Challenge, I looked out the window and there were 5 turkey vultures. Now, for those of you who are like me and excited about animal totems, that was very cool to see, because I go, I know that turkey vulture is a really powerful totem. That's a symbol of strength. That the turkey vulture does not kill. What it does, it's resourceful. It takes what's available. It clears the land. It purifies. It's actually quite the gift. And believe it or not, it really felt strong in my heart. And I can share this with Tom, for example, that this is how I feel about this group and what we've been, this whole purpose behind it. That it's becoming oneness. It's really serving one another. Not one person takes all the limelight, but that turkey vulture, when it finds a dead carcass, a dead animal, it actually tells the rest of all the other birds, it tells the other roosts, the groups of vultures, and brings them together to share. It's the collective. It is like the best example of what we should all be doing. Nobody's trying to get it all for themselves. That turkey vulture showing up and bringing everybody else in and say, hey, here's the food. You don't have to go looking for it elsewhere. And it's not just mine. I'm sharing it with you. That's what we feel this group is, ultimately. This is your playground. So when you're showing up being vulnerable, we're here to support you and uplift you. It's really this using the resources you have, using those resources to heal from the inside, spreading them out like the butterfly. That's a pretty powerful spirit totem. And it turns out of all the various types of vultures, the turkey vulture is the largest one. And I was listening to this as I was walking over here, and I thought it was pretty rad, because they were talking about how the head of a turkey vulture is significantly smaller with no feathers on it, and that it's small for the purpose of being able to get into the side of the carcass so that it can eat. And it doesn't kill its prey. It doesn't prey. It actually takes what is left over. It doesn't kill. It's sustainable. And so it shows up and it's able to put its head in there. It has all these different ways of taking care of itself and its roost, all of the other vultures. That is the coolest thing. The coolest thing. And so there's more to the turkey vulture if you want to look that up. The other thing, if y'all are into numbers, which I am super into, like multiple numbers, I've been seeing 11, 11, 11, 11, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3. I've been seeing this for most of my life. I'm seeing 505 right now. Because for me, numbers are another big one. And 11s, 1s for me is a big one. 3s and 5s. Because they're like ways of reminding me that the miracle's around the corner. And so I might have had to go through an emotional roller coaster, but again, I think I've shared in the past that when something comes up in my awareness that I'm uncomfortable, that means something big is around the corner. And so I should be getting excited. But yesterday I was in the dredges of like, I can't handle this anymore. And I just needed that cathartic release of crying and just, that awareness that I brought, that came up for me, and recognizing that old lack pattern that's in my family. And so exactly. I saw 11. Thank you, Amanda. And so, I love my dad. Everything I said yesterday was just an example of my personal experience. It was not meant to call anybody out. I would never do that, because I believe that's not my karma. My karma is to deal with my stuff. How I react or respond to somebody that's my karma. But to turn around and put someone else on the spot, and I have done it. I'm human, human nature. Sometimes we want to point fingers, but we got 3 pointing back at us when we point the finger forward, right? So we have to remind ourselves that we probably have some stuff going on if we're pointing it at someone else. And always recognize that the other person is you. Yogi Bhajan says that there's the 5 Aquarian Sutras, and one of them is, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. One of them is also recognize the other is you. Sometimes we don't want to see that. You know, our world is going through so much craziness. When you watch the news, you're like, well, how could that happen? Why would God ever let that happen? Well, you know, there's always a reason for everything, but you don't have to have all the answers. You may think you need to, because that's going to take you out of your own personal stuff. And so when you're distracted by why things are happening elsewhere, you're not looking at your own stuff. But if you could really just take a step back and breathe into it and go, why am I witnessing this? If you're upset or you're triggered or you're witnessing something, it's an injustice, and you want to take, you know, like, I want to see justice, I want to see that person righted and the other person brought to, you know, justice, what have you. That's really just a reflection of something within you that needs to be healing, that needs to be confronted. I've had to go through that myself. I know growing up, whenever it came down to child molestations or abuses and rape and incest, all that stuff to me was something I wanted to, as we say, I wanted to see justice be brought up for those people that suffered. But then, you know, since then, I've learned that we all kind of come into this life and we're going to have certain experiences, and those are part of our gifts to serve us. And if we see everything as we're the victim, then we lost the lesson in it. And the blessing is that you had that experience, and that may feel like a weakness, or you may feel ashamed or guilty about it, but reality is that's a gift for you to embrace and say, you know what, that is not who I am, that was just an experience I had. And what that can serve, at least in my experience, is to have the compassion for people who have been through it, and to be reminded that that experience does not define me, that it was just something I personally believe I agreed upon to have in this life, so that I can show up and say, yeah, that sucked. That was crappy. I didn't feel good about it. I felt ashamed and I felt, you know, like guilty and all these crazy feelings. And I had to sit with all that, you know, that ickiness of my body, and I disliked it. And, you know, I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. And, you know, just going to the bathroom felt funny, you know, like just those little things that I had to sit and go, oh my gosh, why am I feeling ashamed? I didn't do that to me. Someone else did that to me. And I was too young to understand that. But because society never really opened up that opportunity for the actual people that have experienced that to feel like they could be heard and seen, it was more about, don't speak about it, because, you know, if anything, you felt more invaded and reopening up those wounds the way that it was handled. Like when I was younger and my sisters and I had to go speak to detectives, 2 men, and we were little girls, it felt icky. It felt like these guys were kind of getting off on listening and wanting to ask these questions. There wasn't a girl or a woman in the room. My mom was livid, rightly so, because of what my mother has experienced in her past, and I still don't know what that is. And so when you're put back in that position of having to relive it, obviously, you're going to continually feel more shame. And now you feel even guiltier because now you've told on someone. But do you know, something in my Beyond Addiction that was brought up just last weekend that I was in it, in cultures, the guilt and the shame is only meant for us to see the contrast, not to hold on to it, not to be stuck in it. It's to go, okay, that was, I felt shame from that, but that's not who I am. It's not to be living in that moment. It's also to see there's a lesson in there, and there is a silver lining. It's just that each one's going to notice it differently for themselves and their experience. So going back to the perfectionism, yeah, I'm still recovering. And control, I know I have no control over anything. But I do have control over my reactions and my responses. How did I move on, Colleen? It's taken years. It really has. And a lot of it has been being forgiving to myself first. You know, I'd say the key to all of it is to really recapturing and reconnecting with my inner child and reminding my inner child that, hey, I'm here. And I try to do this daily. I don't always do it daily, but I try to remind myself, I'm here for you, honey. I'm not going to let anything happen to you ever again. That was just what it was, an experience. And I actually tune into my inner child because when I need some wisdom or advice, I find my inner child has a lot of that. It's very helpful. As far as moving on, I had to find the forgiveness for myself first. You don't forget, but I have control over my kitchen. You're right. That's hilarious. I don't forget what happened, but I forgive the person. Because the only thing I can think of is when you come from that place of compassion for yourself and really exercise patience and know that maybe one day you feel one way, but maybe the next day it's a little easier. And it might be that back and forth of, how can I move forward through this? Well, it's showing up for yourself. It's doing things outside of your comfort zone. It's really, you know, in those cases with sexual abuse, I have to tell you, it's also really kind of regaining that self-confidence in your body, really touching and loving yourself and not feeling ashamed. Like really, truly, like get in a bathtub, get a mirror out, look at your lovely lady bits everywhere. It sounds silly and it's embarrassing for some people, but I get it because I was like that. And you have to be patient, and you have to be loving and nurturing for you, and notice and recognize when emotions come up to honor them and to sit with them. And if you have to cry, just keep on crying. That's cleansing. You know, you're washing away, you're releasing, and just, you know, even just a shower, just cleanse, let that water wash over you and let it take away whatever the residue that you feel is still on you. There's so many different ways you can do it, and doing it on a daily basis or weekly or whenever it comes up for you. For me, it was a lot of sitting with the pain. It was a lot of sitting in meditation. It was a lot of writing, a lot of journaling. Forgiveness is the biggest one right there for me. Moving on, it was learning again, going back to my body's wisdom and really loving this physical body. And touching myself wasn't easy. Ladies, orgasms, bringing yourself to an orgasm is something you should be able to do. And if you're ashamed and you feel dirty touching yourself, like literally reaching down there and just embracing and caressing yourself, that is something to be looked at. It shouldn't be shamed. You shouldn't feel ashamed, and don't feel guilty. We should be able to embrace, this is a beautiful body. I'm grateful to be born into a woman's body, honestly. I have to admit, I like to look at my figure in the mirror. There are those days, you know, ladies, where like, my thighs are all fat and, you know, like they're swollen, and I've been kind of inflamed the past couple days. I don't know about y'all, but honestly, I feel so much better in my body today than I did back then. And it didn't take overnight. I mean, I used to work out like crazy woman over here. I was in the gym all the time. I was kickboxing, aerobics, step, jazzercise, Pilates, you know, boot camp, spinning, you name it, I did it. Marathon runner, I did everything, because you know what? That was my way to get out of my head. That was my moving meditation. It was constantly pushing it. And I did do some damage on my body as a result. But that was my way to handle a lot of it in the beginning. It was a lot of like beat myself up, literally, physically. Like if I could keep myself physically active, and it's still something I need to do, and I need to move my body. If I don't move my body, I can get a little bit cray-cray. And that's, you know, the mix of doing the yoga and the meditation. But if I, you know, it's a beautiful day today. I needed to get out and walk. But he's like laying over there, and I feel good because we've only done half the track, and we're going to do the other half. He's getting a break, and then he'll go to the watering hole, you know. But truly, for me, if I don't move my body, because I gotta move it, if you don't move it, you lose it, I feel like, I feel tighter, I feel restricted, constricted. And I hadn't been doing that very often over the past, few months and such. And so then once I've done it, I feel so much better. Because again, it's going to also bring up better breathing. When I used to be a runner, I had a breathing cadence. Even back then, I didn't even realize I was tapping into the prana, that life force. When I run, it's like, and yesterday was really good because I took a little bit and I ran, and it felt really good. It felt a little jiggly, but it felt really, really good. It felt really, really good. And sometimes you got to do that. I could get a stride, and just, to me, it's very freeing. And I truly feel like I have wings. I used to have a photographer I would work with when I was doing a little bit of modeling and stuff. And he used to say, "What is it about you that you always look like you want to take off, like you're going to fly off?" I'm like, and then I told him I was in the Air Force, and he said, "Oh, that explains it." I'm like, no. Even before that, I was always up in a treehouse, and I was always jumping and flying, and I think it's just my spirit is very free. But I was very restricted for many years, and most of it was my mental constrictions. So yeah, it's been a humbling life. I've had to be confronted. I've had to sit with my shit. And it's not always easy. That's one of the things, I shared with you yesterday. I really had to sit with a lot of what I shared. And most of the times when I share it, it's because it's releasing and I'm letting it go. And, the legacy of lack of money or lack of value and appreciation. You know what? I've been cultivating this from the inside. And that's just, I'm building that muscle. I'm working on it. I feel like sometimes it comes back up where I'm like, oh, there I go again. I drop down into the depths again. Uh-oh, here I gotta come back up, right? I gotta bring it back around. I need to show value in myself by giving myself permission to be worthy, permission to love myself. And that when I show up for myself, I'm really empowering others doing it too, because that's the truth, right? When we value ourselves, when we come from that place of personal power, we're really giving other people permission. Because if we can stand in it, other people see that, they start to go, well, maybe I can do that. And if I just touch one person's life, that to me, I've already done my Dharma, as we say. I've served, but I want to hit a bigger, larger audience. Am I crazy? Why? Because I really have always felt like that was a part of my path. Because I want to show up for whoever it is out there that needs it. Whoever out there needs to hear whatever it is I say. Not to feel like, you're not equal, because we're all just on a different part of our path and journey. We're all equal. We're all one. And that may sound all airy-fairy to some, but it's all energy. And the only reason we see separation is because of what we've agreed upon in the mind. That, a spoon looks like a spoon and a hand looks like a hand. This is my nose and that's your nose. Who knows? Nobody knows. We think we have all the answers, but we really don't know. We really don't. I don't have all the answers, and that's why I really always encourage people. Number one, do your own research. I don't know. There are times I do things, and it's just intuitive for me. I can pick up and see things in other people, but I'm not going to offer anything that isn't asked for. I had to learn that lesson too, to learn to discern if someone is asking for something, then maybe you can also extend it. But when someone isn't asking and you're trying to offer, first off, you're wasting your energy. Second, when the person is ready, the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And if you're meant to teach someone, they're going to show up for you. And when, again, as a teacher, you are always a student. There is no such thing as a true guru, in my opinion. Because the whole thing about life You can look to someone and admire them and put them on a pedestal. That in itself is setting yourself up for a failure. And why do I say that? Because nobody's perfect. We're all fathomable. We all have our errors, our ways. And so if you put me on a pedestal, which I hope you don't, please don't, because I blow my nose out over the side. I do baboofa, just haven't done it on screen, that's all. I do things that are crazy or silly, or maybe don't make any sense to anybody else. I'm always learning from everybody. I love when someone posts something and I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So we're all teachers and students at the same time. I can share wisdom, but you only know your personal experience. And my wisdom is only from my experience and what pours into me. And I love to share that because I feel like personally, the reason I started doing these live videos 2 years ago was because I was receiving messages and I knew this was the perfect medium. I didn't have to write it down. That today's theme is, because I literally will feel the sense of what's going on, and then I'll see confirmation and other things and stuff that's going on around me. And that just makes me feel better that I know myself and I'm able to tap into that for me to see. Everybody else may see something different. And that's kind of cool too, because we're only seeing what is really what's in us. Because your wisdom may see something different than my wisdom. And when our wisdoms come together, maybe they're the same or maybe they're different. And maybe we can shed some light on one another. How cool is that? That's super rad. And that's the whole purpose of getting everyone together and growing and expanding, right? I'm going to have to read these comments afterwards because I see some juicy stuff in there and I can't read all of it. But truly, I am so, so grateful for each and every one of you. I really, 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 from my heart, appreciate all the beautiful extensions of love that I received. Yesterday was a day where if I had my way, I would have just crawled back in bed and just pouted and cried. That's where I was. But I actually got up, did the yoga, did the kundalini, did some movement, and then, again, had a little pouty moment. And then I shared with all of y'all, and that really helped me. So I thank you for holding that space for me. And today, I've got the sun shining. I'm getting a little tan on. I know I'm getting a little color. See, I'm a Florida girl, y'all. And I like my sun. I like to be tan. I don't even like tan lines. So I like my backyard. But I need larger fences that are more secluded because I like my privacy. And I do like to tan with no clothes on. I'm going to be running around naked. I don't care. I do it in my house. Do y'all do that too? Do y'all run around your house naked? That's what I want to know. I know I'm not the only one, Just the unfortunate thing is my house is small. And so me and Tom might be running around. He may be in chonies or not. Maybe be in underwear or not, or pajamas, because it's chilly. But if someone shows up at the door, there's a window. So it's like peeking around the corner. Is someone at the door? Okay, now I'm getting a little silly. But I'm raw and I'm real, and this is just who I am. And so, yeah, taller fences would be ideal. This is a really cool little scene. I'm going to share with you because right behind me we have the birdies on the posts. Isn't that rad? What do you think? From the beach to the bedroom. I love that. You want to see how Buddy's doing over here? He's going to give you a little glimpse of how his doggy life is. Let's see how he's showing up. Is he not showing up because he's lowered in the camera? Say hi, Buddy. Where did he go? There he is. I can't see very well. I got the sun in my eyes. He's a happy dog. He really is awesome. I'm very blessed. He's actually like a guard doggy, which is kind of sweet. So sometimes he doesn't bark unless he needs to. Like somebody shows up at the door and guess who's barking? Look at him. He's got his ears perked up over there. He's like, I heard my name. What do you need? I'm here for you. So I love you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you for showing up. I hope you all have an amazing evening. It can only get better. You know, some of the times, like what I just went through the other day, we really need to go within, and we need to go to the dregs, the dredges, the crap. We have to sift through the mud and the murky and the yucky, and it feels uncomfortable. Because then, like the lotus, we gotta grow out of that mud. And that's an opportunity for us to expand. Because when we contract, it can only go one way, we expand. So we're always expanding or contracting at all times. And we get to choose if we're gonna allow ourselves that opportunity to retreat, reflect, and renew. Once we've done that, then we can come back out and expand and spread those wings and become that butterfly. Ease and grace, darling. So I'm going to sign off from this beautiful location. Have an amazing, rad star day. I love you all.